So good evening, everyone. We're going to take about 30 seconds to let folks file on in from the waiting room, and then we'll get started. And while we do that, feel free in the chat to let us know where you're joining us from tonight. And we'll give it another 30 seconds or so. I know there's a bit of a lag on my computer, so we will give it another 15 to 30 seconds. And while we wait, just let us know in the chat, if you feel comfortable doing so, let John and I know in the chat where you're watching from tonight. All right, wonderful. Hudson, Amherst, Billerica, Tewksbury. I always like it when someone says Tewksbury. I get worried otherwise. Hey, Montreal, Wilmington. Excellent, excellent. Well, we're expecting some more folks, but we will get started out of respect for those that came on time. I'll ramble for a couple of minutes and then we'll get to the good stuff. So my name is Robert Hayes. I'm the Community Outreach Librarian and Head of Technical Services here at the Tewksbury Public Library. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope everyone's doing okay with the 95-degree heat today. I will be recording tonight's event, but just know that no audience faces will be captured. It'll just be John and his presentation. I will be emailing everyone tomorrow morning with a link to a feedback survey. Please take 30 seconds and fill that out. Also in the email will be a link to this recording, and I believe John's going to provide us with some handouts that will be a part of that email as well. And he'll correct me later if I'm wrong about that. I want to thank the Tewksbury Cultural Council for sponsoring tonight's event. They're a local agency that is part of the Massachusetts Cultural Council, which is a state agency. Oh, hello from Framingham. Excellent. If anyone's joining us late, feel free in the chat to let us know where you're coming from tonight. So John and I cannot see you or hear you. If you have any questions or comments, type your questions into the Q&A box, your comments into the your comments into the chat box, and John will get to as many questions as possible at the very end of his presentation. Just to set expectations, I anticipate the program lasting approximately 90 minutes. So we'll get everyone out of here around 8:30. Marion, I'm not even sure where Marion is. That's wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Okay, let me get to the good stuff now and introduce John. And I have all his information on the wrong screen, so I'm going to look this way. So tonight's presentation is entitled Edible Wild Plants of the Northeast. Naturalist and landscaper John Root will offer a comprehensive introduction to the identification and uses of wild plants for food and beverage. Distinguishing characteristics, seasons of availability, habitats, methods of preparation, and nutritional and medicine. That's one of those words I can never pronounce. Medicinal value of our region's most common and appealing wild plants will be discussed. Questions and comments are welcome throughout the presentation, and illustrated pamphlets with plant descriptions, guidelines for responsible and safe foraging, and a bibliography for further study will be distributed as well. And as I mentioned, I want to thank the Tewksbury Cultural Council, which is supported by the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And a little bit briefly about John. John is a certified organic landscaping professional. He has a graduate degree in botany from the University of Maryland and also from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He has presented on a whole host of gardening programs throughout New England at libraries, senior centers, long-term care centers, and other venues. He's the leader of edible wild plant walks throughout Massachusetts, been doing that for over 12 years. He's the owner of Our House, which is a home daycare featuring art and nature exploration. And gosh, I could go on and on. John's a man of many talents and many accomplishments. But all of us who are here watching live on Zoom, let's give a big virtual round of applause to John for joining us here tonight. And John, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, let's see. I think I have to bring up my PowerPoint first. There it is.
Yep.
Now, share screen. And play from current slide. So actually, I'm no longer a home daycare provider. That was many years ago, but I am a grandfather and looking forward.
You know, John, that didn't seem right to me. Now that I read your resume, that was back in the 80s and 90s. So I do apologize.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's part of who I am. So welcome everyone. And I also want to thank the Tewksbury Public Library for hosting this event, and the Tewksbury Cultural Council for funding it. And we acknowledge that we are presenting, hosting, and attending an event on land that was managed prior to European colonization. Please take a moment to find your location on the map and honor those whose land we now occupy. Many of the plants that are native to this country, of course, were used extensively by Native Americans, and they were used not only for food, but for medicine as well. So let's talk about guidelines for foraging to protect yourself, others, and the environment. Proper identification, conservation, and safety will be covered in this introduction. Before eating any wild plant, make 100% sure that it's not poisonous and that you know what it is. Learn the few dangerous species in your area. Don't rely on common names, because common names can be confusing. More than one plant can have the same common name. Use all of your senses, including common sense, but not just a vision. Often you can smell a plant if you crush the leaf, and it will smell quite different from other species. And the feeling, sometimes plants are fuzzy or smooth or that kind of thing. And often it's safe to just, give a quick taste and see what your taste buds tell you about that plant. Learn about where it grows, learn habitat, and learn companion plants. Learn to follow wild edible plants through all seasons, and learn which parts are safe to use. Now, conservation, don't overharvest, just take what you need. Avoid foraging rare and protected wild edible plants. Only collect the part of the plant that you plan to use. Consider cultivating edible wild plants in your garden. Now, safety, avoid toxic areas, know what part of the plant is safe in what season. When foraging wild water plants, know the water source. Only forage plants that appear to be healthy. Get permission to forage. And improve your skills. The more you forage, the more proficient you'll become. With each new plant, study all of its uses, including medicinal. You'll become more and more comfortable with the natural world and all it has to offer as you broaden your catalog of useful wild plants. All this is taken directly from wildedible.com. Stay away from the following plants. And remember, I said that it's important to learn about poisonous plants. You can see how there are many common names for Heracleum. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, but anyway, the giant hogweed has can cause an extreme painful blisters. Only when it's the sun is shining and you touch it, and which can result in scars lasting months to 6 years. Can cause long-term sunlight sensitivity and can cause blindness if the sap gets into your eyes. Watch out for giant hogweed. Canada moonseed should never be confused with fox grape. Remember about using your senses. It won't smell like a grape if you crush one of those blue fruits. And the leaf doesn't look anything like it, like a fox grape or other grape leaf. You can see that there are smooth lobes on that leaf compared to a grape leaf, which has many teeth that look sharper. Also, grape vines always have branching, forking tendrils. Virginia creeper, birds can eat these fruits, but people cannot. So it's a myth that, well, if animals can eat it, so can I. Not true. Bittersweet or nightshade, all parts of this plant are toxic. It actually has caused fatality in children who are drawn to the colorful fruits. The foliage smells foul. It's a vine. Another one in the nightshade family, Carolina horse nettle can cause abdominal pain, circulatory and respiratory depression. I doubt if you'd even want to eat one of these as soon as you taste it, but pokeweed, berries and the older foliage and the roots are toxic, but this is actually America's favorite edible wild vegetable, which you'll be scratching your head about such a contradiction, but we'll talk about that later. But do be forewarned that this is potential, and dermatitis is also a possibility. The sap of this plant, if you're uprooting it, for example, and your hand and the cut root contacts your skin, it can cause dermatitis. Wild cherry, the wilted leaves and pits contain cyanide and can kill wildlife, or rather can kill cattle or sheep or animals that are kept, and if you're feeding them. Wisteria flowers are edible, but the pods are not. They can be fatal. Buckeye is not a Chinese chestnut. You can tell the difference, right? The Buckeyes really do have that eye, very distinctive eye, and they don't have the spiny husk that Chinese chestnuts or other chestnuts have. Poison ivy, all parts of the plant can cause dermatitis. Inhalation of the smoke from burning the vines can be fatal, or you'll get a trip to the hospital at any rate. Don't ever burn wood that has that vine attached to it. And the leaves can be quite attractive in the fall. Leaves of 3. But notice that the margins of these leaflets do not have jagged teeth at all. If there are any teeth, there's usually 1 or 2, and they're fairly large and curving, not sharp on the margins. Poison sumac, if it's actually worse than poison ivy, the contact dermatitis. Fortunately, it only grows in wetlands. And it's a tall shrub, it's not a vine. Touch-me-not is a good plant to know about if you've made contact with poison ivy or poison sumac, and if you can find some of this very succulent wild plant, it's an annual. You just pick it and crush the entire plant, especially the stem has a lot of juice in it, and then that sap just starts to drip from your hands, and apply that to the part of your body that has made contact with poison ivy, and you most likely will not get the rash. It's also a way to treat poison ivy dermatitis. Here's another treatment: sweet fern. This is not a fern. It's a shrub, and if you boil the leaves, again, that's a good remedy for, in fact, taking a bath. If you really have a bad case of poison ivy, and just make some sweet fern tea, which actually is a perfectly good tea to drink, by the way. Then it tastes good, but it's also a great treatment. Just adding that tea to the bath water for your poison ivy. And there's also a product called Technu that you can get from the pharmacy, which is from a drugstore or supermarket, which is a great remedy for poison ivy. And while we're talking about the dangers of the outdoors, we can't ignore those ticks, and it's the deer tick that is the tick that carries Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. It's a tiny thing, and sometimes you get this bullseye rash, sometimes you don't. Anyway, it's good to be aware of deer ticks, and it's good to be. You can treat your clothing with permethrin 48 hours before going out. That's one way. Or that actually kills ticks on contact. But there are some other repellents as well that you can use. So I'd like to introduce you to some folks that you can learn a lot from. And you might even want to get your cell phone out and take pictures of some of these people and contacts, just to, this is, after all, this is not a spectator sport here. I really want to convince you that you can do this. And the more you know, of course, the more confident you'll be. So if you really immerse yourself, Wildman Steve Brill, you can't ask for more of an expert than him. Wildmanstevebrill.com. He has a sense of humor, as you can tell. And he He's written a great book, Identifying and Harvesting Edible and Medicinal Plants in Wild and Not So Wild Places. That is the title of the book. Also a fantastic, large book, Wild Vegetarian Cookbook. This guy is a vegan and a chef, and you can tell he's a chef just by the fancy recipes that he offers. But what I like about his website is that he has very detailed descriptions and photos of a variety of parts of the plant at different parts of its life. So it's like an encyclopedia online, but it's very accessible, very plainly. He has a sense of humor, but he's also very specific and a lot of information. And here's another fellow named Samuel Thayer. Look at those books: The Forager's Harvest, Nature's Garden, Incredible Wild Edibles. A lot to glean from those books. foragersharvest.com. Josh Fecteau, joshfecteau.com. Wild Edibles Monthly Guide, guidelines for foraging tips, reasons to go outside. So he's a kind of a naturalist in general. He doesn't limit himself to edible wild plants, but he knows a lot about them. And some of these folks also have Blanche Derby. My oldest son actually had Blanche for an art teacher. You can see the artistic flair in her book, My Wild Friends. And she has several wonderful YouTube videos. Each video features a single plant, and it gives you a lot of information about that plant. So find her at facebook.com/wildweedwoman. And then Russ Cohen, he's a Massachusetts guy, and he has led a lot of edible wild plant walks. I'm sure he's still doing it. I also really respect the fact that he does public plantings. He's really trying to keep these plants available into the future. And so he does a lot of planting of these edible wild plants to make sure that there will be plenty in the years to come. Users.rcn.com. Eat wild. There he is, Russ. Just do a search for Russ Cohen and you'll find him. Adam Harriton, learnyourland.com. Another fellow who's really got a lot on the ball. 125 plant and mushroom videos. YouTube.com. Learn your land. So edible wild plant websites include Eat the Weeds, Edible Wild Food, and again, wildmanstevebrill.com. Field guides. There you go. It's nice to know, these aren't focusing on edible wild plants. They give you information about all of the plants out there. And then you're going to want to be a botanist. The more you're out there, the more eager you are to learn what you're looking at and what's that plant, And there's some great Facebook pages out there too. There's Wild Plants of Massachusetts just do a search for wild plant Facebook pages. And you can post a photo of something that you're curious about, and people will eagerly tell you what it is. Now, the first plant I'd like to describe to you is common chickweed, Stellaria media, and its close cousin, star chickweed, Stellaria pubera. Now, this is an amazing plant. In the middle of winter, if there's no snow on the ground, this plant, which looks quite delicate, will be bravely meeting the sun, and those leaves will be green and edible. So imagine being able to eat fresh greens in the middle of winter in New England. So it has some remarkable characteristics. Notice this photo in the upper right, where that stem has been pinched, but not all the way through. So to reveal an elastic pith, that green pith, if you were to have a piece of the stem in your hand, you'd actually see how you can pull it and stretch it, and then it snaps back. An elastic. How many plants have an elastic pith in the stem? Not many. So it's a remarkable plant in that way. So I'll also notice, perhaps you can see the single row of hairs on the stem. Isn't that remarkable? Chickweed, great stuff. I'm not even going to read all this. Just glance at it. What does it not have, right? What can it not help, right? I mean, people used to say, if you're ill, take chickweed. It's bound to help you, topically as well as internally. Now on to, so I do want to just say about chickweed that it's the leaves that you're interested in, but there's nothing wrong with eating the stems. It's just you're probably not going to care for the stems that much. But and you can cook it, but it's perfectly good tasting raw. And in fact, just treat it like a substitute for spinach. And one more comment about the identification. Look at these flowers. It appears that there are 10 petals, but if you look more closely, they're paired, and each pair is actually a single petal that's deeply divided. So that's a very unique feature of common chickweed. They're 5 deeply lobed petals, with giving the appearance of 10. But those flowers are quite small, and they taste best before the flower even appears. And it's a cold weather plant, so look for it in the late fall and again in the early spring. Common plantain, everyone's, most people's yards, especially if the yard is compacted or there's a lot of traffic. Plantain is a tough plant that can grow anywhere. And I'll comment first about the seeds on the seed stalk. They're actually quite tasty, and you don't wait for them to turn brown. It's when they're still green, but they're quite full and ripe. That's when you can just treat it like an ear of corn and strip those seeds off of that seed stalk in your mouth. Now the leaves are edible, but I don't know of anyone who really likes them all that much. There are so many other edible greens out there that I tend to ignore the leaves. But if I had nothing else to eat, I certainly would help myself to plantain leaves. I'm sure they're quite healthy. The thing about plantain is that it's a wonderful first aid kit. If you have a bruise or you can just attach one of these leaves as a poultice to a sore, and it'll heal it remarkably. Or if you have, it's a good way to staunch the flow of blood, and it's also a treatment for stings, insect stings, or insect bites. So you just chew on one of the leaves and then apply it to your sting, and it really relieves the pain. Now, dandelion, one of my favorite all-time plants. Oh my gosh, I'm just salivating looking at it. Unfortunately, the season's pretty well past. April was the month for picking dandelion greens. The roots are also edible, but I never bother, to be honest. They're fairly small, and of course, it takes a lot of work to dig them up and wash them and that kind of thing. But you could think of them as a starvation food, and in fact, people have lived on dandelion roots when there's nothing else. But I just love the taste of the greens, either raw or cooked. They don't taste that great though after the flower, when the plant is in flower, when the plant is blooming. So it's at that point the leaves start to taste kind of bitter. So notice the defining feature of the dandelion. It's French for dent de lion, a corruption of the French, tooth of the lion, because the teeth of the leaf point backwards. Now, again, the nutritional value is absolutely fantastic. There's something about these wild plants that they really outshine our cultivated vegetables, which have been grown mostly for appearance and taste, but not as much for nutrition. So let's look at dandelion leaves and compare them to spinach, kale, and collards. It's hard to beat kale, as you can see. Kale outshines just about everything, but dandelion certainly holds its own with spinach and collards, and even is superior to kale in a few categories, such as iron, 1.7, calcium, omega-6, it shines in that category, and pretty comparable in many other respects. Chicory is a close cousin of dandelion, and you might even think that it is dandelion if you look at one of those leaves. One way to tell it is that the midrib of chicory sometimes has a reddish cast. Also, dandelion is not hairy at all, but you can feel that chicory leaves are somewhat fuzzy, especially towards the base of the leaf. Chicory roots have been used if you clean, of course, the root first, and then roast it as a substitute for coffee. It does not have caffeine, but it has a kind of a satisfying taste. And it's often been used when coffee is scarce to either 50-50 with coffee, or just a cup of chicory and just pretend it's coffee. People actually really enjoy the taste. So there's the chicory leaf up close, and I don't know if you can see the fuzziness about it. It's something that you more have to feel, or and magnifying lenses can certainly help as well. But even though dandelions are no longer available, chicory is now available and has been for a while for foragers. Sow thistle is another member of that, and you can see the flower looks quite like a dandelion, but the plant looks nothing like it, and it is edible. Sonchus oleraceus. So you would want to forage the leaves when it's still in the rosette stage, not when the plant has bolted, as in the right-hand photograph. Wintercress, one of my favorites. Now look at the hearty dark green color of these greens. And again, you want to forage them before the flower stems have arisen from the center of that rosette of leaves. And it's in the wintercress, it's in the mustard family, or the brassica family. And you definitely have that bitter taste. Especially, I mean, no one eats it raw. It's not like watercress, although it superficially resembles watercress, and they're both in the same family. Even cooking it, it's still going to taste somewhat bitter, but some bitters are better than other bitters. And I just like there's a real tradition in Europe for eating bitters in the spring, and this is an early spring green. So definitely put this on your list of edible wild plants to get to know, because it's common enough. Sometimes you'll see an entire field later on in the year when it's no longer in the edible stage, but those yellow flowers, and just a field of those yellow flowers, because it's so common. And also, you may not be able to see the detail, but every member of the brassica family has 4-petaled flowers, and this is no exception. Here's this close cousin, the watercress. And I've been enjoying watercress cooked. I'll put it on top of my stir fry the last few minutes and just let it, wilt, and it's done. For decades, I just thought of it as something tangy to put in your salad, but and it's really a very hearty and nutritious vegetable. But do be cautious about washing watercress. There might be there might be waterborne illnesses to contend with, or even intestinal worms and that sort of thing or giardia can hang out in water. So anything that's aquatic, you should wash quite thoroughly. Garlic mustard is also in the mustard family, but the leaves look nothing like the last 2 plants we looked at. You might be familiar with this plant because it's an invasive species. It's not native to the United States. And like many plants, the roots conduct chemical warfare. They actually inhibit the growth of other plants, other roots near them. So that's partly why this plant has been so successful. And the edibility, it's actually the contrary to other plants where if you wait until the plant has sent up the flowering stalk, you're too late. In this case, it's just the right time to pick garlic mustard. A few weeks. I mean, you don't want to wait too late, but when it's just maybe less than a foot tall or so, that's a good stage to pick garlic mustard and treat it like you would any vegetable, as a cooked vegetable. And how about this Virginia waterleaf? Notice the striking variation in the color of the leaves of this plant. And it's one that I don't have a lot of experience with, but I just wanted to introduce you to it because it's fairly common, and and the taste is decent. Speaking of common plants, oh my gosh, common blue violet beats me why they call it blue violet, because it's never blue. It's either purple or white flowering, or a combination of the two. And it's ubiquitous, right? You see violet everywhere, and in your lawn, beside your lawn, in the woods. And there it is in flower. Even when it's in flower, you can go ahead, you can even eat the flowers. Many people like to do that, but the flowers are fairly tasteless. It's the leaves that I'm interested in, because they have a hearty taste, slightly mucilaginous, slightly peppery. The taste is great. It's an overlooked vegetable. Very few people are aware that they can eat common blue violet. And the advantage of this plant is it can be eaten any month you see it out there, you know, before it flowers, after it flowers. It has months and months of edibility. Now, notice in the picture on the left, you have to be sharp in your observational skills. One of these leaves is not like the other, and that is this one right here. That is a plantain leaf, not a violet leaf. So it pays to really kind of scope out a plant when you're getting to know it, and notice how it differs from other plants in the area. I should mention also that it has more vitamin C than oranges. It's a quite nutritious plant, and it's just one of the many edible wild plants that outshines supermarket vegetables. And stinging nettle is one of those as well. It might surprise you to learn that stinging nettle is edible, and it indeed is, but you first have to cook it, or blend it, or dry it, and make tea from it. All those are different ways to use stinging nettle. You want to catch it in the spring, earlier than in this photo on the right. This is really too late in terms of harvesting as a vegetable, although you could harvest it and dry the leaves and use it for nettle tea at that stage. First, I should point out that yes, this plant really does sting you. And you can see on the left those treacherous barbs that will inject a chemical into your skin that you'll really feel, and you'll feel it not just for a little while, but even the next day. One thing you're going to want to do is familiarize yourself not only with the plant, but with its antidotes. And let me show you the curly dock or yellow dock. If you take some of these, take a leaf of this and chew it, and you'll macerate it, to release the beneficial sap from that leaf, the juices, and then apply it to your stinging nettle sting, and the part of your body that's stinging, and it will relieve that sting. And the same goes for broadleaf dock. Okay, so I just wanted to assure you that if you're stung, and in fact, remarkably, if you take some of these leaves and put them between, inside a cloth or inside a bag or something, and then crush the leaves. At that point, it's safe to chew them. And then you chew some of those leaves after they've been pre-crushed like that. And then it's quite remarkable that the juice from chewing that stinging nettle leaf will actually relieve the sting of the stinging nettle. But let's get back to eating this. Again, I seem to have a stir fry virtually every night, and I just throw whatever I've got in the refrigerator into that pan, and I always put the greens in last because they don't take that much cooking. And it has a very tough, fibrous stem, so you're probably going to want to strip the leaves from it either before or after cooking. That's easier to do after cooking, because obviously the plant is no longer hazardous to touch. So when you're harvesting and preparing stinging nettle before you've cooked it, please do use caution, and just gloves. Sometimes gloves aren't sufficient protection if the gloves are cloth or something like that. Those barbs can actually pass right through. So stinging nettle is good for a lot of things. This is the stage that you want to find it in, by the way, in the early spring. before it's really gotten too tall. But there's so many things that allergies will, and also you might have heard that treatment of allergies if you drink stinging nettle tea. Nettle tea is a hearty, good tasting tea, and also perhaps you've heard that intentionally being stung by bees is a way to contend with arthritic pain. And the same is true of intentionally being stung by stinging nettle. And it's worth the temporary pain to be relieved of pain for months down the road. And it really can be quite effective. So to make nettle tea, now this is not the tea that you drink, but a way to give a nutritional boost to your plants if you're a gardener. And it's a misnomer really to call it tea at all. It's really just a liquid fertilizer. But you fill the bucket with cut nettle leaves and add rainwater almost to the top and set it in a warm and sunny place and stir every few days. And it's ready to use in a couple of weeks. Dilute it 1 part nettle solution to 10 parts water, and it's great for a lot of vegetables. So wood nettle is another nettle, stinging nettle, that is actually quite delicious, as the name implies. The habitat here is in the woods and the forest floor. It grows quite well in the shade. It grows even better in the sunlight, but it can't compete with the other plants like goldenrod and the tall perennials that would just completely overshadow it. And back to commenting about the stinging nettle itself, you won't find that in the woods. You'll find that in sunny, rich soil. In sunny locations. It likes like in farmyards or where rich soil can be found. But wood nettle is another. It definitely stings you if you touch it, but if you handle it carefully with gloves and harvest it, bring it home, cook it, you've got a delicious and nutritious vegetable there. So once again, let's talk about curly dock or yellow dock. You can see why it's called yellow dock because of the roots. You can see why it's called curly dock because of the leaves, the margins of the leaves. And yes, this is also an edible green. It's not just an antidote for the stinging nettle sting. I don't eat it very often, to tell you the truth, because it's a fairly sour taste, but some people like that sour taste. And you could even consider just having a few of these leaves along with other leaves. You can have, just as when you're preparing a salad, you might have a variety of different species, different plants in that bowl. You can do the same when you're cooking a mess of greens. Different species can share the same pot. And so you might enjoy curly dock with a mix of other greens. And there they are on your cutting board, ready to be cut and prepared. Baked curly dock chips, there you go. Broadleaf dock is not in the edible category. It's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't taste that great. So no one I know bothers to cook it, but it is a good one to know because it does help to relieve the sting of the stinging nettle. Ostrich fern. Now there is a plant that is considered Epicurean delight. It's the fiddleheads of the ostrich fern that people love. The fiddleheads of no other fern are worth harvesting. They may not be poisonous, but they just don't taste that great. Notice the little light brown scales that you rub them off before you cook them. But that is a way to identify ostrich fern. Just remember that they would appear that way. The mature plant, it can be quite tall, 4 feet tall anyway, those fronds. And if you feel the center stalk on the inside of that frond, it's grooved, and you can feel that groove and see it as well. Notice also the fertile frond, which is right inside the rosette of ferns, that vase-shaped rosette, is the fertile frond points. The parts of it point upward. The branches point upward at an angle. Very distinctive fertile frond. No other fern looks like that. Some more photos of the ostrich fern, including ones of the frond up close. Also notice the base of the fern has this kind of black, scaly pedestal. And this is what they look like in the spring coming out of that foundational base. Asparagus pops up in the wild. So wild asparagus is no different from cultivated. It's just an escape from the garden. And the foliage is quite remarkable. There's nothing on a asparagus plant that looks at all like a leaf. The only thing it has is these they look like needles, but they're quite soft, and they can be quite tall at maturity. So that's the stage where you would discover a patch of wild asparagus that it stands quite tall and it's very easy to see. And then remember where it is. You might even want to mark that spot with a stake of some kind so that you'll find it in the spring and you'll be able to help yourself to some wild asparagus. Now, I mentioned that pokeweed is a poisonous plant, but I also mentioned that it's America's favorite edible wild vegetable. Down south, they call it poke salad. And I just want to say first that I have experience eating it as a shoot, much like asparagus is eaten in the spring. You eat the shoot. This photo on the lower left, I'd say it's kind of late to be picking it because the stalk is already turning red. I would avoid plants where the stalk is starting to turn red. It's only when they're fairly young and maybe a tiny hint of red, but not where the red shouldn't be that dominant. And different people have different techniques or standards of making sure that it's safe. Boiling in several waters are instructions that you'll frequently see. So you get the pot of water boiling, and you plunge your shoots into that pot, and then boil for 10 minutes, and then pour off and discard that water. And then in another pot of boiling, fresh, clean water boiling, you put those stalks in again, discard that water. Some people even do it for a third time. I have found, and Russ Cohen agrees, that it's perfectly safe to just do one boiling. But if you want to be safe, go for it. But I certainly would use that several waters approach if I was eating the leaves of the and people do eat the leaves. It's a kind of a routine or a tradition down south, as well as the stalks. But do familiarize yourself with the treatment of this plant or the preparation rather, and as always, get to know the plant at different stages. Now, the photo in the upper left shows that the stalk in the winter, when the plant has died back, and it can get quite tall, but the entire plant dies back to the ground, and yet the root gets bigger and bigger, so it sends up a new plant every year that just keeps getting more and more of a monstrous plant. But notice that the dead stalks are kind of hollow in the middle, but they have what look like discs inside. Reticulated, I think, is the name for it. But so that's a very distinctive, and often ants make their homes inside those stalks. But that's a very distinctive way to identify it. Also notice that the stalk branches, that instead of having one central stalk and then lateral stalks branching off that one central stalk, pokeweed behaves totally differently. It just branches left and right, and there's no one main stem on pokeweed. So again, it's a great plant to get to know. Birds love the fruits, but they can be toxic, and they are toxic to people. So again, avoid it. Avoid any part except the shoots and the leaves, and even then, know what you're doing in terms of at what stage it really is safe to eat those different parts. But there it is on someone's plate. I'm sure someone is eagerly about to consume that dish of pokeweed stalks and leaves. Looks pretty appetizing, doesn't it? Now, Japanese knotweed, an invasive alien. It's a beast to get rid of this stuff, and it really is important to do so. But you might as well know that you can eat it as well. Now, if you like rhubarb, you'll love Japanese knotweed. Any recipe that calls for rhubarb in the spring, and it's too late now, but unless you have a stand of Japanese knotweed, and you can go ahead and cut all the stalks down, and it'll send up new stalks because you want the stalks to be fairly young and fresh. But you would peel the stalks, and inside that, inside you'll see they're green and juicy and hollow in the middle, and cook it as you would rhubarb, the stems of the rhubarb plant, in any recipe that calls for rhubarb. Wildman Steve Brill has figured out that you just need 2 ingredients, namely apples and Japanese knotweed, to make what he calls Japanese knotweed surprise. So just think of it as applesauce with a tangy extra, which is the Japanese knotweed. And the flavor of those two really go great together. So those plants are ready to peel, and I always cook Japanese knotweed. It's kind of like eating green apples to eat it raw. Daylily, a ubiquitous plant, cultivated but also escapes cultivation. First, let's look at the plant popping up in the spring and notice how instead of the leaves going radially around the plant, they grow in a plane, left, right, left, right. So that's very distinctive. No other plant that I'm aware of looks like that. Also, make sure that if you're thinking of eating those young greens, which you can do, you can pick them and saute them or whatever you like to do with greens. Make sure you haven't found another kind of lily. Now, if you uproot the plant and find those tubers, then you have daylily. That's a very distinctive. And instead of a bulb, which some lilies have, arise from bulbs, and many lilies are definitely not edible, but the daylily is. In fact, those bulbs are also edible. You have to clean it, of course. That photo shows a very well cleaned specimen, but when you harvest it, it'll be a lot of soil will be clinging to those tubers, and you'd have to wash them thoroughly. Daylily can cause an upset stomach, and I think 5% of the population has a kind of a disagreeable reaction. It's not like an allergy, but it's just, for some reason, your system just doesn't take daylily very well, either the tubers or the leaves in the spring. But my favorite part of daylily is the flowers, actually the flower buds the day before they open, or the rolled up petals the day after they have bloomed. That's what I tend to pick, and I'll cut them up and put them in my stir fry. It gives it a kind of an oriental sweet and sour flavor, very exotic flavor, and quite popular with edible food enthusiasts. And there's quite a long season of being able to harvest those flowers, or the buds, or the day-old flowers. You can harvest the flowers themselves and stuff them if you like. My favorite onion of all, the wild leek, also called ramps. They can be found here in Massachusetts, but they're much more common farther south. In Kentucky, they'll have Ramps Festival, and people will go out into the woods with barrels and just fill them up. And these are small plants, so you can imagine that's a lot of ramps to fill a barrel. But the entire plant is edible, the bulb, the leaf. Notice how the leaves don't look anything like an onion. They look more like a lily of the valley leaf. But one whiff of that crushed leaf will tell you this is no lily of the valley. This is a true onion, and it's a delicious plant. So much that Epicurean restaurants will pay a hefty sum of money for a good supply of leeks, and for that reason, it's over collected in parts of its range. But you can grow wild leeks on your own property, and you can find it at some nurseries, and then you'll have your own supply. An interesting thing about this plant is the leaves die back in the spring after they've come up. It's an ephemeral plant. So the leaves die back, you'll think that the plant has died completely because you won't see anything above ground, but it'll come right back in the spring and do the same thing all over again. Lamb's quarters. I had some of this in my supper this evening. One of my favorite plants. Now, the Latin name, Chenopodium album. Album means white. And if you look at those tiny young leaves in the center of the stalk, they are definitely whitish, and they have a bloom that you can, that what causes that white appearance is that kind of a grainy substance which you can easily wipe off the leaf, both the upper surface and the underneath surface of those leaves. If you had that plant in your hand right now, you could rub that whitish grain off and it would turn green. Very distinctive. No other plant has that that characteristic that you'll find. Notice also that it's called goosefoot. And if you look at one of those leaves, you can imagine that looks a little bit like a goose's footprint. I have no idea why the popular name lamb's quarters, where that came from. But let me just say about this plant, it's a relative of spinach. And the first time you taste cooked lamb's quarters, or if you offer it to someone and tell them here's some spinach and this is some great spinach, right? They'll say, oh my gosh, that's the best spinach I've ever tasted. That's a consistent response because it really does. I mean, I love spinach, but I think lamb's quarters is even better. And it's more nutritious, believe it or not, than spinach. So get to know this plant because you will find it. Gardeners are often quite familiar with it because it loves to grow in rich soil. You can often find it in farmers' fields. You can also often find it in farmers, if they have a row of compost. Lamb's quarters can cover a compost pile or a row of compost, and it's like free super spinach for all you can eat or all you can pick. Why not really make use of this plant? It is available right now. It already has been for a couple of weeks, and you've got at least a couple of weeks more. Find out where it grows and just bring home a lot of it. Don't bother bringing home the root. Just pluck the plant above where the root would be, and then you can come back and pick it some more later on if you have a chance. But and then the easiest way, instead of just picking every leaf off the stem, which is pretty tedious, I just hold that stem, and this is not when you're out in the field, but when you're in the kitchen now with a stalk of lamb's quarters. And by the way, the photo on the right, that's too old, that plant there. You want to get it when it looks more like on the left, when it's younger. You hold it horizontally, and the plant is kind of flimsy, so it'll droop. And then that's, so the stem is now above most of the leaves. So you take advantage of that fact by just grabbing all the leaves and ripping them off the stem. And it doesn't matter if you get a little bit of a stem, and the more slender the stem, which it will be towards the top of the plant, the less objectionable it is. But the stem at the base is going to be thicker and less appealing to eat. So that's my system. I'll just take one at a time. I'll strip the leaves off the stalk and toss them into my bowl, and then reach for another stalk and repeat as needed until all those leaves are stripped off one at a time, or not singly, but each stalk at a time. And then use as you would for any recipe that calls for spinach. I highly recommend lamb's quarters. It's great raw too, just like spinach is. Put it in a salad. Put it in a sandwich that might call for lettuce, where lettuce would be appropriate. And some people eat clover. I can't imagine why. It doesn't taste good to me, but maybe you're one of those people who likes the taste. And clover tea, red clover, which is, they're talking about the flower with the flower is actually more pink than red. But those blossoms can be harvested and included in herbal teas. And I suppose any of the flowers out there can be used as something that you can eat, treated as a kind of a granola. Sometimes people like to eat the flowers just because they're kind of sweet. So it's like a trail nibble. The greens of this unusual flower, Asiatic dayflower, are edible, but fairly bland in my opinion. I'm much more excited about Purslane, which is very high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is remarkable. We're used to thinking about, okay, fish oil, if you want omega-3s, right? Well, you can get it from this plant as well. Purslane has been cultivated for millennia all over the world. It's a cosmopolitan weed, but it's also cultivated because in some cultures, people know just how good it is, how tasty it is, and how nutritional it is. Once again, I prefer to find the plant before it's gone to flower or seed. Notice that it's a very succulent plant. Notice the pinkish color of the stem. Notice that each leaf is also quite thick, much more so than most leaves. So you can pick a stalk of Purslane and just drop it on the floor and then find it a week later, and it would still be edible. It's just a lot of that water is just held in there. It would be limp, but it doesn't really matter if you're cooking it up. And another plant, though, that you could eat raw just as easily as cooking it. So experiment with this in various recipes, see what you like. I really put it at the top of the list of plants to get to know because it is so common, tastes great, and has a high nutritional value. Goutweed has a variety of common names. Can often be almost invasive, and well, I suppose it is invasive, but it's also a healthy edible wild plant. Yellowwood sorrel, those heart-shaped leaflets distinguish it from clover, which would never have heart-shaped leaflets. Also, the flower looks nothing like a clover flower. And those leaves taste kind of sour. That's why it's called sorrel, even though it's not a true sorrel. And it's a fairly common weed. My grandson, who is now graduating from high school, but when he was a 3-year-old, he would eat no vegetables, but he would go out and pluck these leaflets and chew on them. And it's something. There's something about that sour taste that children love. Here's another. Now this is the true sorrel, sheep sorrel. Notice how another common weed, by the way, that likes acidic soil. So it's an indicator of acidic soil where this is flourishing. Notice how the lobes at the base of each leaf look perhaps like a sheep's ears. So you can think of that as the reason it's called sheep sorrel. This plant is edible both raw and cooked. There is a plant called sorrel, or a profusion sorrel, French sorrel, that has larger leaves and is cultivated because it has a pleasing lemony sour taste that people enjoy both cooked in soups or in salads. And you can use sheep sorrel for any of those purposes as well. You can find it in abundance in many situations, including your lawn often. Cattail has been called the supermarket of the swamps because there are different parts of it that you can eat. I like the part that I call Cossack asparagus. In summer, the stalks get pretty tall, but before they start to make those cattail hot dog looking inflorescences, you would pluck that long frond of leaves and peel the tough outer leaves, the dark green outer leaves, and the inside, the tender inner portion, which is paler in color, can be eaten raw or cooked, either one, and it tastes a lot like a combination of zucchini and cucumber. Later on, you can also cook the tail of the cattail. Now, this photo here, you can see the male, which is all fuzzy and there's pollen there, riding on top of the female. There's the female cattail. Later on, the male will just fall off, and so in the wintertime, you'll just see the female with the seeds that are packed very densely on that stalk. The male is gone. That male cattail is gone. So it's the male, however, that before it even gets fuzzy like this with pollen, when it's still firm like this female part, you can snap that off and eat it like a vegetable, steam it for a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and eat it like corn on the cob. And you can also later on, when the pollen is available, you can shake that pollen into a collecting bag and use it as a flour substitute for not the entire recipe using cattail flour, but just maybe a quarter or less of substitution for wheat flour. The rhizome of this cattail is also edible, but it takes a lot of processing. It's not particularly tasty. It's a lot of work. But the growing tip might be more useful. I've never tried that myself, but it might not. But I believe what I've read is that the growing tip, not the main rhizome part, which is still in the muck, and you have to contend with that. But it's easier to harvest and to prepare, and might taste better. But I can't say from personal experience. Common milkweed I do have experience with. Now, it's called milkweed because there is a white sap, and there's a kind of a misunderstanding sometimes that people think that means that it's poisonous, but it's not. Let's start with the flowers. They are wonderfully, well, actually, let's start with the leaves, I should say, because, and even the stalks when they first come up, they're edible at that stage, but you have to be aware that there is another plant called dogbane, which is actually a vine that looks quite like milkweed shoots. So that's only for the experienced forager to bring home the milkweed shoots and prepare them. You want to be 100% sure that you know it's milkweed and not dogbane, which of course is poisonous. Now, later on, you can just pinch off the top couple of pairs of leaves, and the leaves are always paired, as you can see, and when they're still tender, and treat that as a vegetable. Then later still, the flowers are edible, and you can put them in a salad, or the flower buds before them, for that matter, or you could cook them either way you like. But then when the pod, which you can see in the upper left, when it's about half the size that it's going to eventually be, which means it's just maybe 2-3 inches long, it's quite tender inside. You won't see the brown seeds as you do in this middle photo. Everything is it's kind of like a green bean in that respect, because bean pods eventually, if you leave them on the plant, will become hard. There'll be a hard bean inside, and the pod will just continue to mature. So when you pick the immature pod, you can treat it like a green bean, and it tastes pretty similar to green beans for that matter. Here's that distinction between dogbane and common milkweed. Dogbane is definitely not edible. And here are two plants, daisy fleabane and oxeye daisy, both quite common. Oxeye daisy is the one that's edible. The buds and the tiny leaves, which are quite dark green, are both quite tasty in your salad or just as a trail nibble. They're almost sweet. And this is the one where you'd say, he loves me not, as you're picking the petals. You'd never do that with daisy fleabane because, as you can see, there's so many of them and they're tiny. And the daisy fleabane plant itself is much taller than the oxeye daisy plant. So there really is no confusing the two. And daisy fleabane, as the name implies, is poisonous. But oxeye daisy, it's, for me, it's just an enjoyable plant to get to know and to have a trail nibble every once in a while. It's quite a refreshing taste, but it's not something that I've ever gathered quantities of. Burdock is very difficult to harvest, and this is a fairly common edible wild plant. It's the root that you'd be interested in. The leaves are terrible. You wouldn't consider them to be edible at all. But another part is the stalk, the flowering stalk before it is in flower. It's an Italian custom to strip that stalk, to peel it and put it in a casserole. Notice how it's called burdock because it has these burrs in the fall that will stick to your clothing. In fact, the fellow who invented Velcro was inspired by burdock burrs, and the flower looks quite like a thistle flower. So back to the root. It's a delicacy. It's also quite healthy. It's great for the immune system, but it's just a straight root that goes down and down and down. So it's very difficult, as you can imagine, to harvest that root. The time that you would attempt to do that, if you're so inclined, would be at the end of the first year or the beginning of the second, because this is a biennial plant. And the plant on the right is what it would look like either at the end of the first year or at the beginning of the second, when that root is sending up new leaves, but then eventually it'll send up a flowering stalk as well. Amaranth. Now remember lamb's quarters. I mentioned what a wonderful plant that is, and it's just one of my favorites. Amaranth to me is right up there. And the wonderful thing about amaranth is that once the lamb's quarters season is pretty much over, amaranth starts to be widely available. It comes into its own. This plant is also called red root. You notice how the stalk at the base is quite and into the ground is quite pinkish in color. Notice also the leaves. They're very coarse looking. The veins are very distinct underneath, and you can feel how they stick out. And the margins of the leaves are kind of wavy, and so they look quite different from lamb's quarters, but they're a close relative of lamb's quarters. And amaranth flowers, and this is the flowering head right here. Sometimes a cultivated amaranth is available that has bright red flower heads, but the wild type is just green. And yes, there are edible seeds in there, but it's quite an operation to thresh those seeds out and separate them to make a meal of amaranth grain. It's much easier to pick vast quantities of amaranth. And again, just like pigweed or lamb's quarters, both of these plants are called pigweed. And incidentally, both lamb's quarters and amaranth are called pigweed, which is why sometimes common names are problematic. But both of these plants love compost piles. Both of these plants can often be found in someone's garden. So many people have just thrown away perfectly good, nutritious and delicious food when they're weeding their garden, and they had no idea they could have brought those plants into the kitchen. Not that you necessarily want to grow amaranth or lamb's quarters on purpose, because it is a weed and it is in the way of whatever else you're growing. But I would rather find, and I always am able to find large amounts of these plants, so I wouldn't bother growing them. And I don't think anyone likes eating this plant raw, but it's perfectly good, which is different from lamb's quarters, which is delicious raw, but it's perfectly good as a cooked green. Evening primrose, I'm not as excited about it, even though the leaves are edible and the root, for that matter, is also edible. But I don't care for the taste as much as I do. As I do the lamb's quarters and amaranth, for example. But Wildman Steve Brill does offer some recipes that, and so he considers it good enough to prepare in certain ways that he likes. This is also a biennial, incidentally. So the second year is the year that would send up a flowering stalk. What can you use wild carrot for? It's also called Queen Anne's lace. That's the same thing as wild carrot, because you can't use it for the root. This is one case in which the wild plant is just inferior to the cultivated. We like those orange, substantial sized roots that are called carrots, but the wild carrot is scrawny and pale in color. It's not orange, and it's just less appealing and less nutritious. But you could try a cup of carrot seed tea if you like, and perhaps you'll enjoy the flavor. You could also use some of the leaves. You'd use them sparingly, but you can use them as a seasoning in a soup or stew. Notice how the flower, there's a tiny purple flower right in the center of the inflorescence of both carrot and wild carrot or Queen Anne's lace. There should be no confusion between this incredibly toxic water hemlock and Queen Anne's lace, for example. The one main and easily noticed difference is that the smell of the leaf is totally different. It doesn't smell like carrot at all. So there should be no excuse. And in many other ways, the leaf looks quite different. The flowers are in these very distinct clusters, so that makes it look different as well. And the habitat, as the name implies, water hemlock, it only grows in wet places. Solomon seal is different from false Solomon seal. False Solomon seal has all the flowers at the very tip of the stalk, where, as you can see in this photo, there are flowers dangling from each leaf, below each leaf, going all the way up the stalk on true Solomon seal. And the stalks are, or rather the shoots, are edible in the spring, just like asparagus, just like pokeweed, although you wouldn't have to be as careful as pokeweed. Now, this is this is a wild plant that's not all that common, so I'm inclined not to harvest it in the wild. I'd rather let that plant grow to maturity. But if you're interested in eating Solomon seal, you could purchase the plant at a nursery and grow it yourself. There's also a giant Solomon seal that would make it more worth your while because the shoots would be larger. And something else to know about Solomon seal. Jim McDonald, herbalist, says it's the most useful remedy I know of for treating injuries to the musculoskeletal system. And he has used it in treating, his patients, people who go to him for help. So many different conditions, and including himself. He had a slipped disc, and it was remarkably helpful. It restores the proper tension to ligaments, regardless of whether they need to be tightened or loosened. This makes it a valuable remedy for sports and activity-related injuries. And he knows of several instances when it's prevented the need for surgery, and also has seen it speed recovery time for people who have had surgery. So that's the rhizome of the Solomon seal that has these effects. But again, be cautious about harvesting something in the wild. You should be able to find rhizomes of Solomon seal available through herbal companies. Juneberry. Now we're talking about the fruits, and juneberries are a native tree. They flower in May, and then they have. It won't be long before these fruits are ripe, and they are absolutely delicious. I consider them to be as good or better tasting than blueberries are. They're a little bit smaller than the commercial blueberries. They have a little bit of an almond taste because of the seeds inside them. Just a beautiful tree in the landscape, and you can see in the fall that sensational fall color. What a wonderful tree to have on your property. It's a smallish tree compared to an oak or a maple. It's not going to get to be that stature. Unfortunately, because it's a tree, the birds have a much easier time reaching those fruits and helping themselves than we do. But I highly recommend that if you ever have a chance to sample the fruits of Juneberry, please do so. You will be impressed how delicious. And also, if you have room on your property, why not grow a couple of Juneberries? The one drawback about this plant is that if there are cedar trees anywhere near, the fruits are very susceptible to cedar rust, and you just won't get any fruits at all. They're all just attacked by the fungus that cedar is the vector for. But other than that, it's a beautiful tree. Wild strawberry, the fruits are super sweet, but it's hard to find them. Often the critters will find them before we can. Notice the difference, by the way, between wild strawberry and mock or Indian strawberry. Kind of an insult to call this an Indian strawberry, but anyway, first off, the flowers are yellow compared to the white flower in wild strawberry. And notice the sepals are much more elaborate that surround the mock strawberry compared to the sepals surrounding the wild strawberry, which is more resembles the strawberry that you're used to picking a larger variety of or a larger version of when you go strawberry picking. But strawberry leaf tea is also an herbal option, for a beverage that's pleasing. This is a very valuable plant, incidentally, for pollinators and also a host plant for many different caterpillars. So it's a great plant to have in the environment. Black raspberry. Now, there can sometimes be confusion between blackberries and black raspberries. These are raspberries, and any raspberry is going to be hollow when you pick it. As you can see in this illustration, it's hollow. Blackberries will never have that thimble type shape. Also, raspberries have an almost perfectly spherical form to them, where blackberries will be more irregular. And fortunately, black raspberries, while they do have thorns, the thorns are much less vicious, and they're smaller and less dangerous than blackberry thorns are. And it's quite distinctive that you can rub your hand up and down, a finger up and down the stalk, and it'll change color because there's a bloom on that stalk that comes off when you touch it. So that's something else that distinguishes black raspberry. And notice the flowers are virtually absent. I mean, the petals are, that's all that this plant does when it's in bloom. It's mostly stamens, but that doesn't stop pollinators from delighting in helping themselves to the nectar. Purple flowering raspberry is another raspberry out there that's an edible wild fruit that is red in color when it's ripe. What a gorgeous flower this is, right? And quite a contrast from the black raspberry that we just saw, where there's virtually no flower at all. But the fruit, in my opinion, is inferior in taste to the black raspberry. It's perfectly edible, but it's not quite as sweet and juicy as a black raspberry. And there are no wild red black raspberries here, but there are blackberries in the wild. And again, they're quite thorny. And notice how irregular those fruits look. Notice how the flowers are much showier than black raspberry flowers. And all I can say is be prepared when you go picking blackberries. You might consider wearing slickers, both the rain jacket and the even pants that are this similar material, because then you won't get grabbed or pierced by those thorns. Mulberries are not a bush, as the song implies about dancing around the mulberry bush, but no, mulberries are a decent sized tree that was brought here because some folks hoped to get a silk industry going, and it never really succeeded here in America, but we still have the trees, and they're a delicious fruit. Birds absolutely love them. Consider putting a mulberry tree on your property if you have room for it, because you will delight in seeing all the different kinds of birds and just the sheer number of birds that come and feast on those fruits. This is another one of those fruits that I've never picked quantities of. The fruits are just too small to treat that way. I suppose it's theoretically possible to make a mulberry pie or do something else with, but I just help myself. As every fruit I find, I pop it in my mouth, and that's how I eat them. I often just look on the ground underneath the tree and pick the fruits that are lying on the ground, and just assume that they've fallen recently and are perfectly good to eat, if they're not obviously soiled. Some of the fruits are black at maturity, others are red, the red mulberries, and then there's even a white mulberry that never turns color. One of my favorite edible wild fruits, the American elderberry, Sambucus canadensis. Very healthy. Elderberry syrup is widely available, and if you start to feel the symptoms of a flu, by all means, you should have elderberry syrup available in your medicine cabinet or in your refrigerator, ready to go, so that when you feel those symptoms, start having at least 3, I would say, teaspoons dissolved in water 3 times a day, and you will ward off that flu. It works remarkably well, much better than anything you can get on the counter, over the counter, and there is nothing that I'm aware of that you would get with a prescription. So these fruits, they're kind of strong tasting as a food. You know, when you pick them right off the shrub. I prefer to cook, and most people prefer to cook with them. So elderberry pancakes, delicious. Elderberry muffins, elderberries in your hot cereal. There are just so many different ways that you could use this fruit. No question you can call it a superfruit. By the way, the flowers are also edible. People call it elder blow when they cook with when they eat elder flowers. Black cherry fruits are much smaller than the commercially available cherries, but they are perfectly good tasting when they're nice and firm and shiny and black. And birds love them for sure. They're mostly pit, but you know, it's an enjoyable experience to eat a lot of black cherries, in my opinion. Wild cherry or black cherry and choke cherry can look quite similar in fruit, but the leaves are distinctive, as you can see here. Beach plum is a native plum, a tall shrub that grows on the Cape in the wild, and it can grow on your property. You can get these plants at a nursery that specializes in such things. I work at a place called Triple Brook Farm in Southampton, and they carry this plant, and there's a beautiful shrub right in front of the house there. Greets me every time I come, and it's alive with pollinators when it's in bloom. So these are fairly small plums compared to your commercial plums. They taste perfectly good, and beach plum preserves are quite popular on the Cape. Staghorn sumac. Now people might wonder, wait, isn't there, how about poison sumac? Well, we saw that plant already, and notice how staghorn sumac is quite different. This particular plant has fuzzy stems and fuzzy fruits as well. The whole plant is fuzzy, and it turns brilliant colors in the fall. What you do with staghorn sumac is you make a mock lemonade, and there's no cooking involved. You just put those fruits in just strip them off the stalk, put them in a bowl, cover them with water, let them sit for about 10 minutes in that way, and then you'd strain off the fruit at that point and just drink that water, which now has a delightful rosy hue, and it has a tangy taste just like lemonade. In fact, I think it tastes better than lemonade. I don't think it requires any sweetener. And you can do the same with smooth sumac. And again, this is not poison sumac. Poison sumac would have white fruits. It would never have red fruits, and they're much less numerous. These smooth sumac and staghorn sumac both have just a large number of fruits on a stalk, and they're all crowded together like this. And because their smooth sumac fruits are not fuzzy, they have been used extensively in Middle Eastern cuisine as a lemon substitute. High bush blueberry, low bush blueberry, and huckleberry are all worth a forager's attention for sure. Now, blueberries and huckleberries can be distinguished. Huckleberries always have 10 seeds, but no more. Blueberries have many more than 10. Huckleberries also have a perfect circle at the tip of the fruit, at the end of the fruit, whereas blueberries will have the remains of the calyx. The 5. It looks more frilly at the tip of the fruit, and usually there's a kind of a bloom, a whitish bloom on the blueberry, contrasting to the color of the huckleberry. But there you go. There's the botanical difference, and who needs to worry, because if it tastes like a blueberry or a huckleberry, it's definitely just that. And again, you can smell it even before you taste it. And speaking of smelling, that smell test works perfectly well to confirm that you have found either the riverside grape or the fox grape. Let's start with the fox grape because it resembles more the grapes that we're used to eating. And in fact, the Concord grape was developed from the fox grape. So fox grapes are quite an experience to eat. They the seeds are surrounded by something that's kind of slippery, and it's hard to separate the seeds out. Very different experience from eating a store-bought grape, whether it's seedless or seeded. But I actually enjoy eating fox grapes, and they're fantastic for cooking as well. Grape preserves or any other, or you can make grape juice from fox grapes if you choose. Now, riverside grapes are much smaller. They taste quite different, but again, I find them edible as raw grapes or in cooking, either one. And it would be the riverside grape leaf that I would prefer to use as a stuffed grape leaf. But you can use fox grape leaves as well, but they're somewhat, well, they're substantially more thicker than the riverside grape leaves are. Black walnut is it's a tradition for me to find these nuts that are still in their husks in October when they've fallen from the tree. And I get out there and I gather them. And actually the first thing I do is I step on them, I stomp them, and I get that husk off. And there it is, a kind of a wet nut that's inside. And if you were to crack that nut open right then in October, you would find that the nut inside is still wet itself, and it needs to cure inside the nut. You just bring it inside someplace safe where the squirrels can't find them, and just let them sit there and dry. And after a couple of months, in time for the holidays, you can crack those nuts open. But don't expect to be able to do that with a nutcracker. You really need to use something persuasive like a hammer or a brick or a big stone, and just and you can buy a black walnut cracker for that matter, or use a vise. But it takes significant force to open a black walnut. But it's worth it because those nuts are absolutely delicious. They have much more character, in my opinion, than the English or Persian walnut that we're used to eating. Black walnuts are a majestic tree, and definitely worth getting to know this nut. Butternut is also a majestic tree, but unfortunately many of these trees have succumbed to the butternut canker. And while the nut is delicious, it's hard to get much kernel out of one nut, and so it takes a lot of work to crack a lot of nuts, and the yield won't be that impressive. But definitely a tasty nut, and there's a long tradition of using butternuts in baking. I remember as a college student in Ohio, I used to harvest hickory nuts, find them on the ground and take them home to my dorm room, and I'd crack them open, and they're just absolutely delicious. We don't have any native hickories here in Massachusetts that are that large. The nuts are fairly small, and squirrels enjoy them, but and they taste fine. They taste great, as a matter of fact, with a kind of a hint of maple sugar, maple syrup sweetness to them. But again, not much of a yield inside those small nuts, and it's a lot of work to use them. Here is an invasive fruit called autumn olive. It's a shrub that has really displaced so many of our native plants, and it's really a nuisance in the landscape. But now that it's here to stay, we might as well use it. And those fruits are absolutely delicious. They have 19 times the lycopene content that tomatoes have. And you can eat them just right off the shrub. You can cook them up kind of like you would applesauce, although you don't need to add water. You just put the fruits in a pot, stir, and they'll cook in their own water. And at that point, if you press it through a food mill and hold the seeds back, you'll get that pulp dripping down below into the bowl, and you can then use that as a fruit sauce, or you could dry the fruit sauce And then you have a wonderful fruit leather that's absolutely delicious, very sweet, very tasty, very nutritious. European barberry also has edible fruits. And so does Japanese barberry. I have no experience with either, so I really can't tell you how good they taste or how to prepare them. American lotus, virtually every part of this plant is edible, including the immature seeds and the underwater rhizome. And arrowhead has a tradition of, as a Native American staple, the underground storage parts. Groundnut also was extensively used by Native Americans, and then colonists learned that they too could harvest these, the tubers, not the beans, but the tubers of this plant are the edible part. And they have more protein than potatoes. And so it was an important food to keep those pilgrims going that first winter in Plymouth. So this is many people are exploring actually growing this, and it's a very it's very tasty tuber, and it can also really hold its own. It can take over a cranberry bog and be quite weedy in that situation, but it would be an alternative yield in a setting like that. Catnip is one of my favorite teas. The leaves of catnip have a kind of a property that's quite calming, and so a cup of catnip tea can help you feel drowsy and be ready to sleep. It might help a child go to sleep as well. The same can be said of lemon balm, a very soothing tea, and these leaves really do smell like lemon. These are both mints, and you can tell a mint by the fact that it has opposite leaves and square stems, and the flowers that look somewhat like the flowers in the photo here. But you would need to use a magnifying glass to see these flowers, peppermint and spearmint. Again, very well-known mints, and they are both fairly common, especially the spearmint, quite common in the wild. Ground ivy, ubiquitous and in your lawn, and just like chickweed, you can find ground ivy leaves in the middle of winter if there's no snow on the ground. Now, the taste of ground ivy tea, for example, not that good, I have to admit. Although if you're really wanting some mint tea, which is often helpful if you have an upset stomach, for example, ground ivy's available virtually any month of the year. There it is. And who knows, the taste might grow on you, as they say. Coltsfoot is also an edible. The coltsfoot tea has been prescribed for. It's a good tea if you have a cough, and coltsfoot leaves have even been used for lung conditions to smoke the leaf in combination with other herbs. Sassafras has leaves that can be cooked. It's like the gumbo taste, but the root is what is how root beer used to be made. The root has a bark that can be peeled off, and then you boil that to make sassafras tea. Delightful taste. Pine needles can also be used to make tea, but you wouldn't just leave them in hot water for 10 minutes and then expect to have much. You really have to boil those needles and even let it cook, let them boil for a while, or even sit. So I do encourage you to read up on the use of pine needles. You can see the incredible health-giving properties that Native Americans were quite familiar with. Eastern hemlock is also a conifer with leaves that can be used in tea. And again, a long list of benefits of Eastern hemlock. Eastern red cedar, likewise. And birch, the young leaf buds and the young twigs. Birch tea. Teaberry, as the name implies. A good tea. This plant is found in the forest floor. Linden or basswood, very popular tea in Europe. And we have our own Tilia americana. And it's the flowers that are made into tea, that are used for tea. Redbud is you can also use the flowers of this tree when it blooms in the spring. This is a native tree, absolutely gorgeous, very popular with pollinators. And you can eat the flowers. You can put them in your hot cereal, for example, or just experiment, find out how you like to use those edible flowers. I commented earlier that wisteria flowers are also edible, but not the pods, which are fatally poisonous. Black locust flowers were in bloom recently, and they too are delicious. They're quite sweet. I've never done anything with them except just pop them in my mouth as is. But I suppose you could sprinkle them in salads as well. Rugosa rose is common on the Cape. Those fruits are delicious. They have a lot of vitamin C in them. You can just eat the fruit. You can dry the fruit and have rosehip tea. You can even eat the flowers, for that matter. So that's the end of my presentation. I've gone down the list of plants that I think you would really want to know first. There's many more, of course, but I want to wish everyone happy and safe foraging, and I would welcome any comments or questions that you have at this time.
All right, John, we are a little bit in overtime, but that's okay. We'll take 5 to 10 minutes questions, whatever you guys have. First question: how would you prepare goutweed for someone suffering from gout?
I don't know if it's possible to use. Can you put my video on, or can you see me, Robert?
1 second, John. All I see right now is the Q&A. I see you in the dark, John. You're looking a little spooky.
I am in the dark. That's the reason. Okay.
We can see you.
Yeah, I don't know why goutweed is called goutweed, and I don't know, to be honest, if it is a treatment for gout. So I'm not an herbalist. I'm not a professional herbalist. So I'm the wrong guy to talk to about that.
Betty says, thank you so much. So much information was provided. Al asks, where can chickweed be found?
Oh, farmers' fields is a good place to look. And it's a weed. So, weeds are typically places where the soil has been disturbed. They're opportunistic in that way.
All right, let's say last call for questions. You mentioned Russ Cohen, and I just wanted to second your recommendation. We hosted Russ for I believe it was a mushroom program back in 2019, and he's very knowledgeable about mushrooms and wild plants. He knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any additional comments or questions? Going once, going twice. All right. So, John, you're going to provide me with a handout that I'll forward along to everyone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Did you have any? Oh, Cheryl says, thank you. A lot of great information. Mary, see, after I end the Q&A, somebody asks a question. Happens every time, John. Mary wants to know the Solomon seal tuber used for
musculoskeletal.
If you say so, John. How is that prepared?
I don't know.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, I'll try to get that answer for you, Mary.
Yeah, but try to remember that name, Jim McDonald, and just look him up on the web. Jim McDonald Solomon seal. That might be a good start for you.
Yeah, good idea. All right.
But again, I would hesitate to actually uproot Solomon seal in the wild, because it's just not that common. So I would just want to respect that plant and leave it be, and think of some other way. If it's being sustainably grown, then that would be my preference.
Sure. Yeah, understood. Another comment, very, very informative presentation. I'll have to check my yard and lands near my brook.
Yeah.
All right. Great. All right. Well, I think we'll end it there, John. Do you have any last words before we wrap up?
I just thank you for joining me, and it's the more you learn, the more you get out of it. And please consider, if you're a parent or a grandparent, or you have nieces or nephews, or just neighborhood kids, bring them along. It's really exciting to them, and respect their intelligence. And kids can be really good at this. They can, and it really sharpens their observational skills. And they have a great feeling of accomplishment when they can actually bring home something and they're contributing to the meal. And it can give them a taste for honest to goodness real food, which edible wild plants are. I mean, I would never be able to survive on edible wild plants. There's not near enough carbohydrates or protein that I can find in the plants that I forage. But boy, are they great for vegetables. And the leafy greens is something that we Americans don't eat nearly enough of. It's really important to get your leafy greens. So this is one way, when you have so many choices of leafy greens out there, it makes it more appealing to have those greens in your dinner, in your diet.
I myself should definitely be eating some more leafy greens, and I do appreciate this presentation, John. Learned quite a bit. I'm going to look forward to the handout tomorrow. Want to thank everyone for watching, for attending, and again, look for that email from me tomorrow morning. And again, thank you to the Cultural Council in Tewksbury. So thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you, Robert.
Yep. Bye-bye, John.
Bye.
Bye, all.